valves, opening, closing. We will keep practicing them. They're not done, but setting up okay? Yeah?
So even though both sides are moving the same amount of blood, I guess for the reason the left side has more resistance be that there's just the circuit is a much
Why
larger
do you,
pool.
oh, sorry. The left side has higher resistance because there's just more length. It's way, way longer. So we haven't done the things that make resistance to blood flow. We could do them, but the things that make it harder for the heart, resistance opposes flow, right? And so pressure has to rise to overcome it. The viscosity of blood, super minor. But if you try to pump, liquid water versus milkshake, you need more pressure to move the more viscous stuff. Doesn't really change that much in our body though. Length of the trip matters a lot. Doesn't really change that much once you're an adult, right? You go from little kid to big. You have to have higher pressures to run the bigger system because you just have more tube length that the blood is experiencing friction along. But you're right, even as an adult, you can always look back and say, well, the pulmonary circuit is shorter, and so it has less resistance than the systemic circuit. And the third one is really the diameter of the vessel, which is the biggest one, the most important one that we talk about, because it can be changed in a moment's notice with vasodilation or vasoconstriction. And then other things that are pathological, like atherosclerosis, is another one that's going to clamp down the lumen, and higher pressures needed to push through that tighter space. Okay. So other valve, you guys are good? Just practice them? Okay. So coronary circulation is a special branch off the systemic circuit that serves the heart itself. Okay, I've said it a couple times, but it's a big deal. This is a sample of some of the vessels that are from your vessel list. Exam 2 objectives is where to find that, but these are heart specific. Okay, so that's why they're here. And probably it's obvious, or maybe it's not, but the heart needs its own unique miniature vasculature because the wall's thick. And the blood in the chambers might, or the gases and the nutrients in the chambers might be able to diffuse into the cells that line the chambers, but it can't get through to the thickness of the wall of the heart. So vessels have to come into the heart itself and serve the myocardium especially. One minor thing before I go further is that the coronary vessels are best and most and freshly filled when the heart is relaxed. So think about that for a second. When the heart is in diastole, right, it's not squeezing on itself. So it's easiest to fill those vessels in diastole than during contraction of the heart. Everybody else gets refilled and reperfused during contraction, but not the heart itself. And then later, tomorrow, the next day, when we talk about your heart rate and the benefits of having a slower heart rate than a faster one. When we have a slowed heart rate, sort of advantage goes to diastole. I should flip it the other way. If you have an increased heart rate, faster beats per minute, diastole gets shrunken more so than the other phases. So one of the benefits of having a slow heart rate is per beat and over time, the heart spends more time in diastole resting. And bonus is that helps to best perfuse the heart itself. Okay? All right, so some hand-drawn hints of the sort of highly branched and the vasculature of the heart itself. You can see some of the ones that we've met already. This is now the pulmonary trunk. They call it the pulmonary artery here in front. And the aorta is just behind. And remember that tomorrow when you meet your heart. This one you can better see. These holes that would be part of the aorta wall, holes that are right above the flaps of the semilunar right here if you draw them in. And this hole really is the beginning of the right coronary artery, the branch of that. And then over here is the beginning of the left coronary artery, which then again branches, if you want to review, to the circumflex, to go to the posterior aspect mostly, and then to our persnickety, our left anterior descending right here, the widowmaker, okay, and others. So I've got some models. I don't know if it's been a long time now, but like a decade ago there was that bodies exhibit. It was in Seattle. Super awesome. I wish they'd come back, despite all the human rights offenses. But not to make light of it, but it was an amazing exhibit. Whether it was done totally in good faith, I don't know. But it was the gentleman who's helping us with the prosection, we were talking about it. I'm like, do you remember that? And without me saying anything, he goes, my favorite part was the vascularization part. And I go, me too, that's so crazy, because it's not real jazzy and like fancy part, but what they had done is taken key organs of the body and had a way on how to dissolve the actual tissue of the organ away and leave the vessels behind, and then plasticize them and then color code them red, blue for veins. It was insane to see how densely vascularized organs are. It just was mind-blowing. And the kidney was one that I couldn't even process. It was like, so, it's like, is there any tissue there? It's just all vessels. So here's okay one. There's another one coming up over here that I found later, just to give you a sense of what we're talking about, okay? And again, just to kind of keep hitting that again and again, atherosclerosis, it narrows these vessels and it makes it harder for the heart to get O2 and what it needs, and it leads to heart attacks and cell death. What else to tell you? An extra picture just to remind you, the coronary circuit. It begins at the base of the aorta and it starts with the coronary arteries that I've named a couple times. Ultimately leads to the capillaries, the whole point, and then coronary veins lead to the singular sinus and then back to the right atrium. That's your coronary trip out and back. So let's assume that some of those vessels aren't so healthy, or let's assume there's something going on the heart and the cells aren't getting what they need, namely oxygen. Okay. So this, I don't mean to say that the only problems that the heart has come from lack of blood flow, because there can be electrical problems, of course, called arrhythmias and other things. There can be structural problems, but this is a big, big, big killer, and it's worth our time. So the first vocab up here, angina. What does that mean?
Pain in the chest.
Pain in the chest. Okay. It can be caused by a number of different things, and we're learning that there's even more than we thought before. So mostly it's caused by low O2 to the muscle cells of the heart, and they don't like it. Okay. It can also be caused by, ultimately the same outcome, but random spasming of some of the vasculature due to stress hormones or other things like this. Angina, though, doesn't necessarily result in cell death, so it's chest pain. Okay. In an MI, in an infarct, whether it's teeny tiny or large, we will have evidence of cell death at the heart. And you can do that with some quick blood work at the ER, say, and look for cardiac troponin. It's a muscle, muscle piece, cardiac specific, where there's some amount of prolonged lack of O2 to the cells. They die, their contents leak out, like troponin, and you can test for it. Okay? And the myocardial infarct means blockage, right, that's at one of the coronary arteries. I'm sure you know the answer to my almost rhetorical question, but if you kill off some cardiac muscle cells, likely to go through mitosis, build some more, great healers, crappy healers. One of the worst healers in the body, one of the slowest repairers, right up there probably with neurons for lack of repair potential. Because they're so fancy, they're so specialized. You can't have all those bells and whistles and divide a lot. Like, no disrespect to skin cells, but I mean really, like, they're pretty fancy. So we kind of tend to see more differentiation and specialty and less ability to regenerate, with exceptions. So yeah, if the muscle cells die, assume that they are gone and assume that they will probably be turned into fibrous collagen scar tissue. Scar tissue is not electrically active. It cannot conduct a path of, memos to contract. It cannot contract either. So with more cell death, you get more scar tissue, which can cause blockages in the electrical signals to the heart, and it also makes a way less effective pump, because it can't contract. Emily, question, comment?
Doesn't it also have to do with the fact that they don't have as many nucleus as the skeletal muscle, and like they're like more of the organelles or mitochondria more than nucleus?
I haven't dug into like the actual if there's an anatomical reason. I think it just, again, it's going to fall back to just that they are so specialized that they've kind of like given up. They don't do a lot of cell cycle. They're just like not set up to go through as readily as some other cell types. If I can track it to mitochondria, I don't know if I can do that or not. And as you probably remember with skeletal muscle, not to get too off my track, but with skeletal muscle, I'm not that cells die, but it's not really that we even see that skeletal muscle does tons and tons of mitosis, but single cells can rebuild and get bigger. If you remember, like if you want to build your muscles up, you don't really see as much mitosis as you might think. It's more just cells getting broader, bigger diameter, building more protein. Yeah?
Because of that lack of like mitosis and hypertrophy and all that in the heart cells, is that why you don't really see like heart cancers and things like that?
It's another good thing to tie in, exactly. So the silver lining of this, right, is that they have very low cell cycle potential, so we rarely find cardiac tumors. That's exactly right. I mean, they line up. Yeah, exactly. It's also why like the piercings you got like in, say, 7th grade that were not the best plan still haven't healed, right? Because cartilage is a poor healer. You guys know that, right? Everyone. And then also we very rarely see cartilage tumors, right? Because they just don't have a lot of it. It's also why it really sucks when you tear your ligaments and your menisci and your knee structures that don't heal very well. Okay, so before we get out for the day, if you or your patient or your family member has chest pain, either for no reason or for mild exertion or during stress, number one, get them to the doctor so they can get an actual stress test done or an EKG done to get some data. If the data shows that that cell death has occurred, they might be a candidate for an angiogram. What's that?
Is it just a testing procedure?
It is. For what? Maybe it's too obvious. It's looking for flow in this case, in amount of blood flow to the coronary vessels. You can use a combination of x-rays and dye. You can inject some dye and watch it move through the coronary vessels and track it and see what kind of percent flow are you seeing through the heart. And you can pick up blockage points and things like this where there's partial or worse blockage in the vessels. Again, most of that blockage again is coming from atherosclerotic plaques. Okay. An angiogram data might suggest that you be a candidate for angioplasty with or without stenting. So angioplasty is the procedure where you go into these places that you saw on the angiogram and clear out the gunk, which is, again, mostly plaques. I have a little really simple movie to show you. The angioplasty can be simply to get into the vessels that are blocked and to remove the crud or to smush the plaques up against the walls and open the lumen. More often than not, really, it's going to be coupled with placement of a stent, this really cool kind of mesh thing that will be expanded to help. It's like chicken wire. It's like putting chicken wire up against the smush fat to keep the vessel open, to keep it as crude and simple as I can. To reopen and encourage flow past those partly blocked parts of the heart vasculature. Let me show you that. And it's a pretty simple one, but it gets the point across. Also, before she starts yapping, percutaneous coronary intervention. Aren't we fancy? What does percutaneous mean? Yeah. Yes, you're going to go on, we're not doing open heart surgery. We're not busting open the sternum and going into the chest. We're going to sneak through the skin to find a vessel. And you know your vessel map, so you can use a little screen and you can get a catheter through a vessel via the skin into the blockage part and then do your handiwork in there and come back out to that same spot that you went in. Coronary for heart intervention to prevent more MIs.
Percutaneous coronary intervention, also known as coronary angioplasty, opens narrowed coronary arteries. A small, hollow tube called a catheter is inserted into an artery in the groin or arm and threaded to the affected artery. A thin, flexible metal wire is then advanced through this tube and past the site of blockage in the artery. A second, smaller catheter is then inserted over the wire and threaded to the same artery. When it reaches the narrowed area, a small balloon on its tip is inflated to reopen the artery and flatten the blockage into the artery wall, while at the same time stretching the artery open to increase blood flow to the heart. Both catheters and the wire are then withdrawn. About 70 to 90% of coronary angioplasty includes placement of a stent, a wire mesh tube that holds open weakened arteries. The stent may prevent re-narrowing after an artery is widened and it stays in place permanently as the blood vessel lining heals over it.
Ugh, awful. I will say a couple things. There's more involved angioplasty. There's little teeny like roto-rooter drills that can kind of go in there and carve off the gunk and then capture it and bring it out. That's not shown there, versus just smushing it up against. If there is a known, embolus, if there's a blockage at the time, like you're at, emergency medicine, you can also use the same kind of technique to go in and remove the clot before you do other procedures. But this is a pretty simple look at a little bit of squishing and then applying the mesh stent to keep it open. Yes?
What do they actually make stents out of that are safe to use?
That's a great question. That's why I need to lean on you guys. That's why we need biomedical engineers out there to make newer, better stents. Some bio-friendly, I don't know. I think they're mostly metal, but I don't know what they use. And it's kind of amazing that there's been enough studies to know that it's not reactive and doesn't cause its own problems. It's coated, it's.
Gold or platinum or something?
What was it?
Maybe like gold or something?
I don't know. I don't know what they use.
Titanium mesh,
Was it?
like TI6 mesh.
I don't know. That's what you guys need to go. I don't know. You guys may know, and I don't mean it to be flippant or not to know. I kind of get excited for the next wave of students like yourselves who may have this, inclination towards chemistry and material science and that cool space between, right, treatments and materials and how you improve them. Anyhow, I think it's really neat stuff. Heart valves too is in that mixture too. So let's stop there and we can start with, open heart surgery tomorrow. I will not show you an open heart surgery. You are welcome to watch one if you'd like. But CABG, strangely, is the abbreviation. Coronary artery bypass graft, where you can't salvage the blocked vessels and you just go around them. You take vessels from elsewhere, and thank God they can sew under pressure, and the surgeon is going to stitch them in and reroute blood past a blocked vessel in a bypass surgery. You've heard of double, triple, quadruple bypasses before, like they're no big whoop, or maybe you could appreciate they were a big whoop, but we talk about them like it's a, big deal, and the number reflects how many vessels you had to go around that were blocked.
What's the G?
Graft, because you're grafting a vessel from somewhere else and you're sewing it over here.
Okay.
So we'll talk about that briefly tomorrow, and then we'll move into heart dissection first, and then we'll come